Hi friends! In today's video I want to share with you a few tips about how to use the Crayola Supertips markers for hand lettering. I personally love using Crayola markers for hand lettering. I think that they work really well, especially for beginners, because they tend to be a little bit more firm than some of the brush pens, and the tips are also pretty short, so they can be a little bit easier to control when you're first starting. But I usually use the Crayola Broadtips in my videos, so I always get lots of questions and messages asking if I'll do a video using the super tips. So that's why I'm doing this one for you today. And I also wanted to show you the worksheet set that works with these. I get emails all the time from people asking which set they should purchase with specific pens, so I thought that I would try to start showing you that a little bit more so that I can refer people to these videos when they're wondering which ones would work with which pens. So this is the large brush lettering set on my Etsy shop, and I will leave a link in the description box below if you want to check those out. And this works for both the Crayola Supertips and the Crayola Broadtips. So I will finish out the alphabet at the end of this video if you want to see the rest of these worksheets. I also wanted to show you 3 different colors because, as you can see, they do have a little bit of differentiation in the sizes of the strokes, especially the down strokes. And I just wanted to mention that is something that kind of happens with Crayola markers, probably just because they're only meant for being art markers. They're not really meant for calligraphy, but you will notice as you use them, they'll start to get a little bit softer, and you might get a little bit bigger lettering or bigger downstrokes as you use them. And you also might notice that when you get them, as you're lettering through a pack of markers, a few of them might write differently than a few others, and that's pretty common. So I just wanted to point that out before we get too far into it. And the last thing that I wanted to mention before I get into the further demonstrations was that Crayola markers aren't like the very best hand lettering marker that you can find. I get a lot of comments from people bummed because they can't find Crayola markers where they live, or because they're really expensive where they live. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend spending a ton of money on Crayola markers. Part of the reason why I think people get so excited about them is because these are the markers that we all probably used as a child, and that you can get for really inexpensive in America, and I'm sure many other places, but they're just a few dollars for a whole pack. So to find something that we've been using all this time and realize that we can make really, really pretty calligraphy out of it, I think that just gets people really excited. And if you've never tried a Crayola marker, some people, I think, maybe think that they're a little bit more amazing than they are. So if you can't get Crayola markers, do not get discouraged. While I do love them, I definitely think that part of the hype is just because it's this really inexpensive marker that we never knew could do such fun and pretty things. So there's definitely a lot of other options out there for you. Don't stress if you cannot get Crayola markers. So the first thing that I want to show you is just a comparison between the Crayola Supertips and the Crayola Broadtips. The smaller pen that you see here is the Crayola Supertips, and the Broadtips are the large, I would say the most common Crayola markers that we see most often. I love using both of them. I have the Supertips, and I love that they come in a bunch of different colors. I think that I got a 100 pack, and I think it was only like $12.99. And they come in really pretty colors. I also do find that they work really well for highlighting things. I also love to use them for color coding things, so it was definitely worth it to purchase the 100 pack. A lot of the shades look really similar, but they're still really pretty. So here are the differences in the two tips. The super tips are a little bit smaller. One thing that I find with the super tips is they seem to have a harder time getting the thin upstrokes as compared to the broad tips. I'm not sure why that is. I think that it's just because the pen tip feels a little bit more flexible to me. The main thing with both the super tips and the broad tips is when you do lettering with them, you are going to have to rotate your pen. You can watch me and you can see me do this a few times. I do it more with the broad tips than I do with the super tips, but you definitely will get a better look if you continue to rotate your pen. And the reason is just because these tips are not very flexible, that they are able to bounce back up when you're putting pressure on them. So as you letter and as you put pressure on the tip of the pen, it's going to stay firm, and you won't get those thin upstrokes that you're looking for in hand lettering. So here I'm just going to do an example of me not rotating the pen at all, and you can kind of see that the pen tip is tipped up, and it's just going to stay like that until I rotate it and do it again. So that's why when you use these pens, you just kind of have to get used to rotating the pen as you go. And to be honest, it doesn't really take that much, for at least it didn't for me, to practice doing this, and it kind of became second nature. So if you watch closely in a lot of my lettering, I will rotate my pens, even the ones that are not Crayola markers, and even ones that don't need to be rotated at all. It's just kind of a habit to me at this point. And so it's not a huge deal, but it is something you have to do if you want to get those thin upstrokes when you're using Crayola markers. So as you can see, you can get pretty nice upstrokes even with a big chunky marker like the Crayola markers. Both the Supertips and the Crayola Broadtips give you really similar upstrokes. The look is not totally different from one to the other, so it kind of is a preference of which one you prefer to write with. But I do want to mention, since we were talking about rotating your pen, that you do not get the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes simply by rotating the pen. You still have to apply the proper pressure, just like we do with typical brush lettering. So when you are doing your upstrokes, you are going to press a little bit lighter than you normally do to try and get those thin upstrokes. And it's the same for regular brush lettering, it's the same with every pen. Practicing that over and over and over and making that part of your muscle memory is definitely the way to get beautiful brush lettering with these pens and with other brush pens as well. And then on your downstrokes, you want to make sure that you're pushing quite a bit harder, and that's where the rotating comes in. You might find that you need to rotate more often, but the rotation does not give you the thin upstrokes and the thick downstrokes. The pressure that you apply does. So practicing this and making sure you get that down will help you to have the look you're going for if you're trying to get the look of brush lettering. And I just wanted to do a comparison between these markers and my Tombow markers. The Tombows are beautiful and I love to use them. I'm not saying at all that the Crayola markers are a better quality than Tombow markers, but I just like to show a comparison that you really can get a beautiful style of lettering using the Crayola Supertips and the Broadtips as well. It really just comes down to a preference. If you like a really, really firm tip, you might like the broad tips. If you like something that's a little bit more flexible, you might like the super tips. Especially if you want a really wide variety of colors, the super tips are definitely the way to go there because they have that beautiful pack of 100 for, I think it's under $15. So I will leave a link below in the description box for the page that I created on Amazon with my favorite lettering products, and you can see both of those there if you're interested. And I do have affiliate links with those, but you do not have to purchase from there. You can definitely just go and check it out and see what I'm using in this video so that you know what to look for next time you go to the store. I'm just an Amazon lover, so that is where I purchase from and where I recommend from. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments box below. I hope this was helpful for you just to see that really it's not all about the pen that you use. It's definitely about just practicing and really getting those thicks and thins. Nice pens are great, but they don't make or break your lettering, and we can really make some beautiful stuff with these Crayola markers as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you want to find me on Instagram, you can follow me over there. It is just at howtohandletter, and I have been posting videos there when I'm not able to make a full tutorial on something, but I get a lot of questions. I try to post it there in my Insta stories and try to save them to my profile. So if you are looking for more daily inspiration, feel free to follow me over there as well. Like I said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.